All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's topic is sugar, especially sugar hidden in our diet. Before we get started, just a couple items to take care of. We will have some time for questions at the end of the presentation, and you can type those in by clicking the Q&A section in the lower part of your control panel. We will be posting a recording of the webinar on our blog. The link for that will be shown at the end. And if you would like a PDF copy of the presentation, there will be a link to download that on the same post as the recording today. And if your question does not get answered, please email our support inbox, which will be shown at the end as well. Okay, sugar. A lot of us love it a lot, and a lot of us eat too much of it, right? So let's talk about it. First, I will cover why we do need to be mindful of how much sugar we are eating. Then we'll chat about some places you may not expect it to be, some obvious, some not so obvious. Then we'll talk about some easy ways and small ways to start taking steps to lower that overall sugar consumption. So like I said, let's start with the why. Why do we need to be paying attention to how much sugar we're eating? What exactly does it do to our bodies and minds that makes it so bad? Well, the list is kind of long, unfortunately, so I'm going to start on the physical side. I want to start with one that's probably the most familiar with, and that's diabetes risk. Diabetes is when our bodies have higher than normal blood sugar levels. Having high levels of blood sugar for long periods of time can cause major health issues with almost all parts of your body. And there's a very high link with sugar consumption and type 2 diabetes. People who eat too much sugar have a higher rate of obesity, which is considered the strongest factor for diabetes as well. Also, high sugar consumption can make our bodies resistant to insulin, which is what our bodies produce to help regulate sugar levels. So if we're resistant to it, it's not going to help us very much, right? Next is, let's go back. I mentioned obesity just now, but it's worth touching on again. If you have trouble losing or maintaining weight, looking at your sugar consumption can be one of the biggest factors in helping you get on the right track for that weight control. And then we have joints. This is something that seems to be getting more widely known, but still not really widely enough, in my opinion. Sugar causes inflammation in our bodies, and inflammation in our bodies can cause joint pain. Studies point to excess sugar consumption increasing your risk of things like rheumatoid arthritis. That's not good, right? But inflammation can also get better when you lower your sugars. So you can help lower symptoms of these things too. Even if you have it, even if the cause isn't sugar, lowering sugar can help some of those symptoms. On the same inflammation topic, our heart is affected by inflammation caused by sugar as well. Extra insulin, which is released in response to sugar, like I said, in our bloodstream can cause artery walls to be inflamed, which makes them get thicker and more stiff, which leads to things like heart disease, heart attacks, and strokes. A 2014 study in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that people who ate 17 to 21% of their calories from added sugar had a 38% higher risk of dying from cardiovascular disease than those who consumed around 8% of their calories from those added sugars. And then let's talk about that dreaded word, cancer. Sugar, unfortunately, can lead to an increased risk of cancer in a few ways. First, people who eat more sugar tend to be overweight, which I've already mentioned, which raises your risk of cancer. Also, that inflammation, which again, I already touched on, can lead to higher prevalence of cancer. Those aren't the only connections, but those are big ones there. Skin health is another motivation to lower that sugar consumption. Too much sugar attaches to molecules in your bloodstream that can damage collagen and elastin in your skin, which is what helps keep your skin firm. So damage to those things can cause premature wrinkles and saggy skin, right? Also, if you have teens or you yourself struggle with acne, sugar might be partly to blame as well. And then your teeth. Growing up, you probably heard at least once that you shouldn't eat too much sugar because it will rot your teeth, right? Especially just coming off Halloween. We probably maybe said it ourselves. And it's true. Bacteria that cause cavities thrive on the sugar that is left over in your mouth after you eat those snacks. So lower those treats and also brush your teeth. Sexual health can be affected by sugar. This seems specifically in men as well. So something to keep in mind with that. And then energy is the last physical effect I'm going to touch on, but it's certainly not the least one. This is a huge physical side effect of eating too much sugar. You may have heard of a sugar high, right? You eat some sugar and then you get an energy spike due to that blood sugar spiking. You get all this excess energy. But then what happens next? That's right, the sugar crash. Rather than maintaining a steady stream of energy throughout your day, sugar, eating a lot of sugar especially, is going to give you that up and down energy, which is not conducive to a productive day in most cases, right? Okay, so that's a lot of issues already, but that's only on the physical side. So I want to talk about the mental and brain health side as well. I just talked about that sugar high and crash, and that's a perfect segue to the first effect in this slide, which is how sugar affects our mood. Those quick bursts of energy that are followed by the drop in sugar levels can have long-term effects on your mood and can even lead to a greater risk of depression in adults. Sugar can also affect our memory and our mental capacity. Some research suggests that the inflammation that sugar causes in the brain, in the body, can also affect the brain, leading to memory difficulties. Studies of long-term diabetics show damage to the brain, leading to issues with learning, memory, and other functions. Higher A1C levels. Now, A1C is what doctors use as kind of the gold standard of blood sugar levels. That's been associated with brain shrinkage. High sugar diets reduce a chemical called BDNF, which is essential for new memory formation and learning. Lower levels of this chemical are linked to dementia and Alzheimer's. Very serious stuff we're talking about here. And again, if the sugar is going to lower that chemical, again, it's going to lead to those things, unfortunately. But the good news, once again, is that we have control to change our habits and help prevent some of these serious issues just by looking at sugar. Here's something to keep in mind as we move on from some of these negative effects too. A lot of us know sugar is bad, but we still eat it. And we sometimes eat a lot of it, right? That's because our body and our brain become addicted to it. It alters our brain's reward system, leading to more tolerance for sugar levels, which makes us need more and more and more to get that same level of reward, that feel-good sensation that we get when we eat those snacks and those sugars. And our body will crave more and more of it. So I say this because I want you to know that it's not simply having more willpower or powering through to lower your sugar intake, right? We don't just have to just be tough and do it. Your body and your brain are addicted to it. So you need to have a strategy in place to conquer this. And you need to have patience and you need to have grace with yourself as you're working on it as well, okay? Deal, you need to have patience because there's going to be ups and downs. Okay, good. Moving on. Next, I want to talk about those sources of sugar. It's important to recognize where you may be getting sugar from in your diet because, like I said at the beginning, some are going to be obvious and some not so much. And this, of course, is not a comprehensive list either, but it can get you started with places to look in your own eating to find some places where you can cut down. So first is what most of us think of, and that's those sweets and this desserts and the candy, right? Candy bar, sucker, piece of cake. Those are sugar bombs, and they can be a great starting point in looking to cut down on big amounts of sugar throughout our days. Drinks is another really big area where we are getting big doses of sugar. Sodas, juices, sports drinks, flavored coffees, sweet teas, alcohol, all of those things can have double, triple, or even more of the daily recommendation of added sugars. I'm going to circle back on added sugars and back to specifically juices in a bit. So hang tight with that one, as that's usually a bigger area of confusion for people. But truly, it's really, really easy to overconsume sugar in liquids, and it leads to way more sugar than our body is equipped to handle. So that's a big one as well. So those are the two bigger ones, right? Your sweets and the obvious ones. But let's talk about maybe some not as obvious sources. Sauces and salad dressings, spaghetti sauce, ketchup. There can be a lot of added sugar in a fairly small serving of these foods. And then with salad dressings, especially ones that say they're low fat, right? A lot of times what they do is they remove the fat, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, depends on what kind of fat it is, but they replace it with sugar to keep that taste. So big thing, and this is gonna be a theme, you need to read those labels with your dressings and your sauces to see if you can find a lower sugar, kind of more whole option. You can also make your own as well. There's lots of good options online for your own salad dressing specifically. Granola bars and protein bars. These are great, right? Quick, easy snack or breakfast option. There's so many out there, and they can be a really good option. But once again, we need to be careful because some of them are absolutely loaded with sugars, especially when we're talking protein bars in these bars that are made for people who are running marathons or hiking 20 miles in a day. That's not for a normal person. We're not going to burn that energy off, right? We don't need that much energy. So again, you just need to be mindful when you're reading those labels. Look for the lower sugar options if you can. Nut butters and jellies that you can get at the store can have a ton of added sugar in them as well. Again, say it again, Shelby, reading labels is going to be the key. I'm going to elaborate on the labels on the next slide here in just a second, but just some other foods to be mindful of before I get to that. Breads, that kind of gets people sometimes. Those processed breads, we know have carbs, right? We know bread has carbohydrates, but sugars, yes, added sugars. People specifically add sugars to bread to make it taste better. And not that it tastes bad, we're just used to so much sugar that we think it does. Yogurt is another one that can get you. Flavored yogurts especially can have a ton of added sugar for flavor, again, for that flavor. So your best bet, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but your best bet is getting plain yogurt and then flavoring it with your own fresh fruit. Instant oatmeal as well can be a big sugar bomb, something else to keep in mind. There are lower sugar options now out there with those pre-made oatmeal, or you can go with making your own very easily as well. I'm going to have a recipe for you here in just a little bit. And then on that breakfast note again, cereal. These are all over the spectrum, right? You have ones that are crazy high with sugar. You have ones that are not so bad. But either way, you have to be really mindful of portions when it comes to cereals, which is not really easy, right? We pour a big bowl, and that's usually about 4 servings at least. So be mindful of the cereals, or again, look at other options like the homemade oatmeal I just mentioned, or things like eggs, other that don't have, that's low carb and low sugar. So keep those things in mind too. Last thing to keep in mind is canned fruit. So fruit is considered a natural source of sugar, but sometimes companies will still add sugar into those canned options to sweeten it up a bit more. The great thing is that these companies also make no added sugar options that are just the fruit packed in water. So it's easy. Make that choice, right? Again, this isn't everything that has added sugars in it, but these are good places to start to cut down on that overall sugar consumption, which is our goal for today. Okay, I said I was going to touch on these things, so I'm going to do this quickly. First, let's talk about added sugars versus natural sugars, because I mentioned that we should be looking out for added sugars, right? So naturally occurring sugars are going to be sugars found naturally in food, like fruits. That's going to be your biggest natural sugar source. Added sugars are any sugars or sweeteners that are added to foods during processing or preparation. So like that canned fruit, for example, when they're adding sugar to that, that's added sugar. And then when you're adding straight sugar to cereals and those types of things, that's added sugar. It also includes chemically manufactured sweeteners, and can include from natural sources. If someone adds honey or fruit concentrate to another food, it's still considered added sugar because it doesn't occur naturally in that food that you're eating. Juice, that's where juices can struggle with this too, which I'm going to touch on here again. So when you hear the term added sugar, though, that's what they mean. Anything that doesn't naturally occur in the product. And that's what we're looking to cut down on specifically. So in 2016, the Food and Drug Administration revised the food labels to make them list both total sugars and added sugars. So most food labels now have these. You've probably seen them, although some they have, I think, until middle of 2021 to switch completely. But that's going to make things a lot easier to know how much of your sugar is added in foods. So that's a great way to track and kind of keep track and look at those added sugar numbers and try to find a lower option, right? Also, something to keep in mind, especially if they don't have that added sugar label on them, some other sugar synonyms to be on the lookout for. Again, this isn't a whole list either, but brown sugar, corn sweetener, corn syrup, fruit juice concentrates, high fructose corn syrup. Like I said, that honey, even though it's natural, can still be considered an added sugar. So something to keep in mind. And then these other ones, any molecules ending in ose that are added. So those are just, when you're reading labels, when you look at the ingredient list, that's something to keep in mind as well. When we're looking at labels in general, we want to have a small amount of ingredients as we can, right? Because then we can get to those whole foods a little better. But especially if you see these types of ingredients, it's something just to be mindful of. Again, make sure you're cutting down on stuff like that. And then artificial sweeteners. This is a big topic, and there are differing thoughts to it to some extent. So I'm going to stay in the middle here a little bit. Some will say that artificial sweeteners can help because they cut down on your actual sugar intake overall, right? You're not actually taking in sugar. It's a substitute for it. It's just a sweetener. Others say that they can still cause an insulin spike and can cause you to crave more sugary foods in general because you're still getting that sweet taste from them and it's still activating that reward center. There's also an argument of a lot of them being chemically produced and therefore can do other damage to your body, right? Another school of thought is to sweeten foods with natural sources, like I've already mentioned, like honey, maple syrup, things like that. So that even though honey adds sugar to those foods, for example, you still at least get other nutrient benefits and your body knows a little bit more what to do with those natural sources. So you're getting other good things when you're adding honey or maple syrup versus a chemical. Whereas, and again, like sugar itself and those other artificial sweeteners, they have zero benefits whatsoever. Again, other than possibly some negative ones. We don't know for sure. Stevia is a popular artificial sweetener that we get asked about quite a lot. That is considered to be natural. It's derived from a plant, so that could be an option for you as well, as a different sweetener. Basically, I encourage you to talk with your doctor on these types of things, especially if you have diabetes or other health concerns that can impact your sugar levels. So you want to discuss what's right for you, right? But in general, though, blanket statement here, the best bet is always going to be mindful of the amount of sugar and the amount of artificial sweeteners as much as you can, right? Keep it as simple as you can. Go for whole natural foods as much as possible, and you're not going to have to worry either way, right? We don't have to have an argument if you're just cutting down on everything overall. Okay. We've got some things to look at as far as cutting down and be mindful of, but it's easier said than done. I know that. I live that as well, just like the rest of you. So what are some small things that we can do to get started? Well, we can track. For those of you who are regular listeners, this is not going to be news to you. You should track your nutrition at least to get a feel for how much sugar you're consuming. You don't have to track every single meal every single day for the rest of your life, but you also need to know how much sugar you're eating, and you also need to know where it's coming from in order to start cutting down, right? I just gave you a bunch of foods that have some added sugar in it that you may not have known. And if we don't know that we're even eating sugar, how can you know where to cut down, right? So, side note here, I want to talk long-term goals. The recommendation for added sugar, so again, that sugar that's not naturally found in the food that we're eating, is 36 grams per day for men and 32 grams for women. Let's put this into perspective. A leading soft drink has 41 grams of sugar in 12 ounces. 41 grams in a can of soda. One soda is already well over the recommended amount for the whole day, right? So that's why I preface that by saying long-term goals with these recommendations. A lot of us are most likely over that amount most days, and some of us are a lot over it. I get it. So we need to take small steps to work down towards that amount as close as we can. If you're at 100 grams of sugar today, work it down to 90, and so on and so forth. Slow and steady wins the race. Now, it's easy to say, well, I'm just going to stop drinking soda and I'm just going to stop eating candy. And if you know what, if you're one of those people that have done that, that is absolutely fantastic. But I can tell you for the general population, the success rate of doing it cold turkey, the long-term success rate is very, very low. So just know that going in. That's why we always recommend small steps. So a couple things that you could do looking at just portions of your foods and your drinks. Drinks, for example, if you drink 2 sodas before lunch, can you drink 1.5 instead? Or can you drink one of those baby cans versus a regular can? If you're drinking 41 grams of sugar in one 12-ounce can, if you can cut that in half, that's a big win already, right? So same thing with candy and sweets and those obvious sources of sugar. Make a goal, find an accountability partner. That's a big deal too, and then work on cutting down. All right, I want to touch on those fruits versus juices here for a second. So if you're drinking juice that has added sugars, let's see if we can move that to a better option first, one that doesn't have added sugars. But I also want you to work on getting your sugars from whole fruits versus juice if we can. Now, why is that, right? Yes, those sugars in 100% fruit juices are technically not added, but you also get such a higher dose of sugar than if you were to just eat an orange, for example, versus a glass of orange juice, because all you're doing, you're taking just the juice, right? So they're squeezing, I don't know how many oranges worth. You're not getting some of that fiber. You're not getting that stuff that you get in the fleshy parts. So it's going to take more to get that amount. So you get all the sugar that you would eat in 4 oranges, when you can just eat one and be satisfied, right? You're not going to eat 4 oranges typically in one sitting. And like I said, you don't get that fiber either a lot of times. It's still a big dose of sugar at once, even if it's natural. So we just need to pay attention in general with that. I just want to take a side note because we do get that question quite a bit. For example, an 8-ounce glass of 100% fresh squeezed orange juice is 23 grams of sugar. An orange in itself is 12 grams. So most of the time, like I said, you're not going to eat more than 1 orange at a time, right? So if you say, okay, I'm going to have 1 orange and I'm going to have some water, you're going to save yourself a big dose. You can save yourself half of that sugar, right? And then on that note, just eating more fruit in general for your sweets is a good way to get that taste in, but not going crazy on those added sugars. Dark chocolate is another option to still get in some chocolate without a bunch of the added sugars that some of those milk chocolates have. Like dark chocolate dipped strawberries, for example, is a great dessert. And again, it's going to be less sugar, more nutrients than a big bowl of ice cream or something like that, for example. Again, progress. You don't have to have it every night, but if you can start swapping those things, it's going to be helpful. And then just try to drink water, unsweetened tea or black coffee as much as you can, or at least lower the amount of sweetener that you're using in general. Like I said, liquid sugars, they're so hard on our body, and it's a really big area that we have a really big opportunity to cut down on a lot of sugar. So just do the best you can on that side. Couple other things here before we wrap it up. Other things that you can do include using different flavorings in your food other than sugar itself, or even those artificial sweeteners. Cinnamon and other spices, vanilla extract, unsweetened cocoa powder, lemon, and fruit are easy ways to flavor up drinks and water with the fruit specifically without that sugar. And then I already mentioned using fruit in yogurt. It also works great in oatmeal too. And then for baking, unsweetened applesauce and mashed bananas are actually really, really good substitutes for sugar, believe it or not. If you've tried it, you know what I'm talking about. And on that note, actually, let's end with a few recipes to end our day. So talked about oatmeal a couple of times. Again, we know that there's carbohydrates in these foods, and that's a whole different story. But what we're talking about now is those added sugars. And so this is a really good way to find an oatmeal that doesn't have as much of those added sugars. So we've just got rolled oats, unsweetened almond milk, bananas. That's where, again, you get some of that sweetness in, vanilla extract, cinnamon, and salt. Simple. Put it in a saucepan, go from there. And if you guys want these recipes, you'll be able to download them on the blog post at the end. So don't furiously write, because I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I'm almost out of time. So, but here's some things that you can print out or save to your computer once you download the PDF file. So oatmeal there, that's a good breakfast one. I tried to focus on foods that typically have more sugar, right? So it's going to be breakfast and then more of kind of desserty type foods that I chose for some of these recipes today. So this one's actually frosting. And another good twist on this one is that you use avocados instead of like your butter. So you're getting more nutrient dense fats when you're using these avocados. And then for the sweetener, you use cocoa powder, maple syrup, and then vanilla extract, and then salt to however much you like it. So great option for a healthier frosting. And then I know you're saying, okay, I have frosting, but I need cake with it too, right? Okay, well, here's your chocolate cake as well. This is it's more of a dense cake. As you can see, it's more of kind of a fudgy type thing, but this one's good. I will tell you that. And it uses unsweetened baking chocolate. If you want it a little bit sweeter, again, if you're kind of transitioning down, you can use 70% dark chocolate instead of just the unsweetened baking chocolate. That's what I typically would use. Again, if you're transitioning from regular cake to this, that might be an easier transition for you. But again, coconut oil, pumpkin puree, which is an interesting one, or you can just use more coconut oil. And then again, your cocoa powder, your honey for the sweetness, and then some eggs in there. So chocolate cake, here we come. And then this one, I'm a big apple cinnamon fan. I hope you guys are too, because I'm going to share this one. This one is just apple cinnamon snack bites. So this one, we've got a lot of good natural sweetness here. We've got dates, we've got apple, cinnamon, and then we have almonds for good healthy fats. And then we roll it in coconut. So again, simple here. Soak the dates, put them in you need a food processor for this one. That's the only extra machine you might need, but really easy. Once you get them together, you just refrigerate and then you roll it into the coconut and you're good to go. And then let's do some cookies. Why not, right? So this uses those bananas again that we talked about. And this one actually uses the applesauce as well. So we've got double bonus here. So bananas, peanut butter, applesauce, vanilla extract, a lot of good a lot of good spices is what I'm meaning to say. So lots of good stuff here. Again, oatmeal makes those cookies really, really yummy. So hopefully I got you a few options here as far as some recipes to get started. There are a billion more online. You can search low sugar options. There's lots and lots of things to try. Just try to have an open mind with these types of things. Try something new. It's never going to hurt you to try something new. And hey, you might find some really good options that you like to cut down on some of that sugar that you're normally eating, especially with the holidays coming up. All right, before we get to questions, just a real quick summary. Cutting down on sugar in your life is going to make you healthier. It's that simple. It's not always going to be easy. You're not always going to succeed as much as you want, but I promise it's going to make you healthier. So track your intake, find small ways to reduce, and give yourself some grace and some patience. And oh yes, don't forget to be awesome. I just thought I'd add that in there today as well. All right, that's all I got for today. Just a quick refresh on upcoming webinars. Last one for the year of 2020, self-care, really important topic, especially after this crazy year. And then we're going to start off with a similar topic in 2021. We've actually got all of the webinars now listed that you can register for in 2021. We just added that to the blog. I'll show that. I'll have that information. Actually, it's right here on the bottom, healthcheck360.com/blog. But first one in January is going to be building resilience. Again, crazy year. Let's get our minds right and have 2021 be a much better year, shall we? And then if your company uses questions for lifestyle rewards, these are the questions that will pop up for you. They should be pretty easy to answer if you paid attention today. But again, most companies will not have these, but they will pop up as you go to submit for lifestyle rewards. If it doesn't pop up, then all you have to do is say that you watched the webinar. So no worries if you don't see them. And then here's our contact information. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, that blog. Like I said, that's where you're going to watch this webinar's recording. That's where you can download the recipes and the PDF slides. That's where you can register for December's webinar and all of 2021 webinars. Hopefully you can get those done if you're enjoying them. We do have lots of good topics for next year, so I really encourage you to take a look at those. And then you can always contact us if you want to chat. Our 800 numbers here to set up a phone call, or you can email us at healthcoach@healthcheck360.com if any questions pop up or if there's anything that we can do for you. So with that,